and welcome back to the Atlantic front. I am TheJakeman, and welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for the support. We are starting to get some subscribers, and I could not appreciate that more. And if you haven't done so already, if you could please consider to subscribe to the channel and leave a like or a comment or anything. I love hearing from you guys. I know that this is obviously objective, so some of the things I say you might disagree with, some of the things you on another channel, or whether you're weather, or even with your family. It's all a discussion-based, informational-based type of channel, and I really appreciate all the support. So we have Hurricane Erin, and let's go ahead and take a look at her. And she is sitting right about 140 miles north of Puerto Rico, and it is a monster of a hurricane. So here we go. This is Erin. We have noticed that there is a weakening, and I'm going to use that word very diminished, because a weak Category 4 storm or strong Category 3 with the wind field and the expanse that Erin is a monster. It is a huge storm. So whenever we see this, I really hate when we're using the hurricane scales, because we see that go up to a Category 5, and then we watch the weather and we all go, oh wow, there's a Category 5, and then it weakens to a Category 4. It's like, oh, this thing's losing its guts. You know what? And it goes to a Category 3. People start to turn the channel, or they don't believe that it's going to do it, or the cone shows that it's going to curve around and go a fish storm. But there are going to be impacts within the East Coast with this storm. That should not be an alarming news for you. It's whenever you have such a large scale storm, you're going to have within maybe even 500 miles impacts, and even closer when you get even closer to a body of water, a landmass, then you get even more impacts. So yes, it might just be beach erosion and rip currents and rip tides and wave heights and everything like that. You're going to see that. But why I'm bringing this all up is because the eye wall replacement cycle that is currently happening, and this is very typical of Category 3 storms. So you see process usually begins when the outer ring of thunderstorms, as you see here, and it's called a secondary eye wall, and it forms around the inner eye wall, or the original inner eye wall, and this secondary eye wall will gradually contract inwards, and as it competes with the inner eye wall for moisture and angular momentum, effectively strangling the inner one, and this causes the inner eye wall to dissipate. So while we're looking at that currently, the hurricane's winds during this phase typically weaken temporarily, like clockwork. That's what this is doing, Category 5 to Category 3. However, once the outer eye wall fully replacement, thus the eye wall replacement cycle, the inner one becomes the new primary eye wall, and the storm can re-intensify. Obviously, it's going over the warmer waters. I don't see any real landmass that it's going to take any of its strength away. So 9 times out of 10, the new eye wall is often larger in diameter, which spreads the storm's powerful winds over a greater area. And this can be misleading, because even though the peak wind speeds might have dropped, the overall destructive footprint of the storm has increased. So as we watch Erin live, we are seeing that eye wall replacement literally happen. So let's say this was the original eye wall, then it was here, and then now it's here. And these are now gone. Obviously, those eye walls don't exist anymore, and it starts to reconstruct. So when it gets maybe another 500 miles up in here, you're going to have another eye wall. So notice these eye walls were tiny. This one's going to be bigger, and it's going to have more intensity in a larger scale. So the strengthening becomes almost a doubling because of the pressure. So when the pressure starts to literally shoot down, then it starts to scoop up, almost like a scooping nature, scooping up all that moisture and turns that into a very, very dangerous storm with a massive impacts all over the all over the country, most likely the East Coast. So here we have the live picture of the right just north of the Dominican. Looks like it's moving out of the Puerto Rico area, and it is looking like it is trying to make its jog like this. So that is the way it's going, like this. But we're going to talk about how close this really gets. So let's take a look and see what the actual spaghetti models are telling us right now. So here we have the Euro, and it is showing exactly what it was doing last night. Almost complete uniformity and agreement between all of the Euro models that it is going to be a relatively, what we call a close call. It's going to skirt in between Bermuda and the East Coast like this, and it is going to fire up this black line just like this and then out to sea. That is what the official spaghetti plots, spaghetti models are showing. So no real massive change to the forecast or anything like that we are seeing now that we're getting into that more, I guess I want to say the word permanent, but there's nothing permanent about storm prediction, but more of a concrete agreement between all the models. So we're going to get to the first place where we're going to look at this, the current state of what the forecast looks like, what Erin looks like, and the days that we're going through. So this is Zoom Earth. So as you can see, it was around, let's see, 11:20 a.m. yesterday that the hurricane went to be a Category 5 hurricane, and it lasted for just roughly 6 hours, give or take. And then it went down as it went over land, and then into a Category 4, into a current state of where it went into the 2 a.m. into a Category 3, and then moved, and currently as a 2 p.m. update, you're talking about a 946 millibar, and then here's the forecast. Now, I am not trying to say that I know anything more than anybody else, but where I'm in a level of disagreement that I really couldn't be more in disagreement about this, that it is not saying that this is going to end up being a Category 5 again. It's a matter of fact, it's saying that it is going to lose steam as it moves up the East Coast. Now, as it gets close to North Carolina, and it looks like it's jogged outward. So maybe this disturbance is what's stalling out in that, maybe that's disturbance holds some strength to try to disrupt Erin and that. But here's where my major disagreement is. You are talking about a large amount of warm water right in here, okay? So warm water, and this thing is going to be sitting on that warm water for, a good amount of time. So you are going to talk about that whole area is from right around, I'd say, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., it is going to have a very defined eye wall at 145. So just shy of Category 5. And then it starts to dissipate. Now, if it was going to go a little further into the Bahamas or Turks and Caicos, there's already warnings for Turks and Caicos. So those islands are already obviously under a hurricane warning or watch, and you are going to most likely see hurricane warnings that are going to extend from North Carolina all the way down here. I wouldn't be surprised if it even comes down here, because they'll do beach erosion and rip tides and rip currents. So you're going to see the majority of all of this, if it hasn't already happened by the time this video goes out, it is going to happen. So now back to where I don't necessarily agree with. So when you have this standing, now it is a faster moving storm. So The current speed of the storm is, I think it was 14 miles an hour. So typically storms are going to be anywhere from 9 to 12 miles an hour. That's typical. So we would consider this to be a pretty fast moving storm. So is that why maybe it gets caught into another eye wall replacement cycle? Because it's going to continue to do that. But as it gets over to the warmer waters, where is it going to settle? Does it stop at 145? I just don't see necessarily how this isn't going to reach Category 5 status at least one more time, unless they are really giving a lot of credence to this disturbance right in here. All right. So does that have the potential to keep, since it's doing its own circular rotation like this, it's doing that whole thing like this. Now, this is just one of those areas that is a watch. So let's hover over that. This is, well, let's get rid of that. So this is about a 10% chance in 2 days, 10% chance in 7 days. So this could just be that disruptor that ends up, hurting or taking a lot of the Erin momentum. Maybe I'm not saying this from a standpoint of what I believe is going to happen, but I've been thinking that this thing has been moving at a 14 mile an hour clip. But what if it does stall in this area? What if it slows down? That's where I'm at. So it could be doing something like this, and then if it stalls just for a moment, then is that give it enough opportunity and time to strengthen again to a Category 5? I'm thinking it does, just because of the warm waters, and it does seem it was going at 17 miles an hour, and now we're at 14 miles an hour. So that is something that I wanted to show you all of where the forecast and it is a major hurricane. No matter even if it doesn't hit Category 5, it already has that potential, and it knows it knows how to become a Category 5. And as it moves over warmer waters, I definitely think that it is going to move into a much more destructive type of a hurricane. And we're going to talk a lot about the models here. So let's talk and see what the GFS says. Here we have the GFS. So the runs that came through are still very much inactive. So we see Erin moving down here at your screen here. You're going to see, I'm not going to go over a lot of where Erin is, because you really could just turn on the news and see exactly where it is. This is not a forecast or even a model run. This is strictly just the current state of where Erin is. So as it moves forward, we are seeing that the GFS believes that goes into a 944, a 942, 941. So a 941 would be a very strong Category 4. So this primarily is why I believe that they don't think it's going to be a Category 5. Nonetheless, it's going to be around 145 to 140 miles an hour. And then it goes up and it does seem to weaken as it moves out and goes north looks like it's going to miss Newfoundland now. That's great news. So we were talking a lot about the close call. And when you have a Category 4 storm like that, you're going to see a good amount of warnings, as I said before, like this, but then the impacts can be quite large. I would say anywhere from the impacts would look like this, just from a standpoint. You could even see some New Jersey into New England, something like this. Now, when I say impacts, notice that's not in red. That is just precipitation or breezy conditions, tropical storm conditions. You also have the Outer Banks that I will guarantee you the Outer Banks is going to get a tropical storm warning. And you're probably going to see most of the coastal cities, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, Charleston, they're all going to get most likely tropical storm watches or tropical depression watches, depending on what they end up saying. And that would probably be for beachgoers and riptide warnings and all of the currents. You're also going to see some pretty good waves that are going to end up happening from this. So I would say they're maybe all the way down into Miami, all the way up to Jersey is going to see some level of wave impact that is going to be a large factor for Erin, if not the only factor for Erin. But there will be impacts along the East Coast, and it will be something to watch for, and or seeing any type of change in the modeling. So this is August 20th. So we're still 3 days out. And this, all the models say that it is going to move forward. Now, again, and I've done this, I don't know, this is probably be my fourth time talking about this. This semi-permanent high has not moved. Therefore, you see steering currents like this around the high, like that. Okay. So then this is too far out east. And you don't see anything that is telling this storm to move that way. You only see the storm being drawn like this into this high, into the pathing. You also have a pretty good clip of moisture that sets up like this. So you have a high that's pulling, and of course you also have the westerlies, and it's all telling Erin to go that way. So this is pushing down. So you're seeing ridge highs. There's a ridge high there that is showing or escorting Erin out to sea. And that is all because of the Azores semi-permanent high pressure that is really swallowing up a lot of the pressure and directing everything towards. And it's very, very common because this time of year you don't see enough. You know, when the Bermuda highs come in, then you start to see some more of these storms moving towards the west, that northwest, and then you start to see Gulf entrance, Caribbean into the Gulf, and then up into Florida, or just going into the Carolinas. There is a lot of things that we're going to talk about with that. So that is the GFS. Let's take a look at the Euro. So we're going to do the Euro and the Euro AI together. They're pretty much in uniformity. The Euro tends to think that it's even going to get closer than and it gets to about a 944, but it says it even gets closer to the Outer Banks. And it sets up to be a pretty big monster. So that is what it's doing, but it's still these highs that are staring out there, the semi, again, there it is. And then you see these precipitation and then air currents running this way. And then this swallows it all up and takes it out to sea. That is the way it works. That's what the Euro is. But I will say that this is closer from the Euro. So you did see, and I said this last night, we are seeing just a slight wobble, and the wobble did move it slightly west, but not enough to sound the alarms or say that anything crazy. It's still very, very much in agreement with all the models that it's going to split between the Outer Banks and Bermuda, but it did jog slightly towards the west. That's what the Euro is. And then I said that the Euro AI is pretty much in agreement as well. It goes up and it gets really, really close, but then takes this almost this northeasterly movement. And again, almost exactly where the Euro and the GFS are saying. So that's what that is. Then you have the Canadian. The Canadian is saying that it's going to even take even a more northerly jog and not even really come, I'd say maybe even 200 miles further out east than the other models. So the GEM is a pretty good model. I like the model. It does a lot of good stuff. So I always call it the happy medium model. So the gem's always been something like that. I used to think the Canadian was like that, but it seems like the Canadian's kind of jumping on board with the euro. Here's the icon. I haven't done all the models for you guys because, sometimes these videos can get a little crazy long, but since we are getting close to where Erin is going to start making impacts. So the icon tends to think that this is, now watch what happened here, guys. All right. If you remember the high pressures, that's we're going to talk about that semi-permanent high pressure over the Azores. Okay. But watch what happens as I move this forward with the icon. Watch what pops up. You have a high pressure that moved way down here. So this high pressure formed like this, whereas the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian, the GEM, everybody said that it was a dual high that was setting like this. So it was a high here and a high here. But it's set up down here. And this is the other thing that is huge. So we'll talk about this in a moment, but you have a monster 908 type of a millibar storm. That the icon's saying this is not only a category 5, they're saying this thing would be along the lines of historic. Now, forgive me while I look this up because I don't want to get this wrong, but this, I think it is in line. I'm going to do this on the fly here. You have a 9.0, let's see here. You have this goes to a 906, 906, 905, 905. So a 905 millibar hurricane would be one of the most powerful storms in history, which would marry it to Hurricane Katrina at a 902, Hurricane Wilma at an 882, which was a monster storm, William and Katrina both in 2005, and then Hurricane Dorian, which was a 910 millibar. So this storm is and this pressure is an elite and destructive company. We do not want this to be anywhere near the United States or any islands. So it does represent a very upper limit of what the atmosphere can produce in terms of a tropical cyclone. I mean, when we saw Wilma do the 882 in 2005, I mean, just think about how long ago that's been. So you're talking a tremendous amount of time here. So let's move this thing forward. Well, I guess I can get rid of that for you guys. So let's move this thing forward. The icon really stays at a 911 right off the coast. So you're talking, I'd say, coastal effects starting on August 21st. And then it stays right, and it even shows that it's touching the Outer Banks. Obviously not the full brunt of the eye wall, and it's not showing the full brunt of the eye wall, and it is on the weaker side, but still at a 915 is going to make miserable conditions for North Carolina all the way through August 22nd until it starts to move. That would also, the icon is saying that it's going to be very close to the East Coast. So you're talking about Virginia and Maryland and, really up to New Jersey, Delaware, all of these, everyone gets affected. And notice that the high stayed right off of here like this. So just for a moment, that semi-permanent high moved out and turned into a Bermuda high, which then allows this to move forward. That's what the icon. So the icon is saying that this high got it too close, just enough, but it didn't set up fast enough. So thank goodness. But that's what the icon is saying. So I think we end up, well, let's see. And as it moves out to sea, that at high pressure to semi-permanent high pressure, move from the Azores over to here. Just enough of that semi-permanent high just moved slightly, and it moved slightly out there, and it started moving our storms. That's interesting. That is very, very interesting. It's the first model that I've seen really have that wobble towards the west. Just a wobble. Again, no impacts as far as severity or landfalling eye wall or the brunt of a 905 or a 904 905 millibar storm going on land. So that is fantastic, but it is way too close for comfort. Absolutely too close for comfort. So we have the nav gem, which we're going to talk about more likely, but it does show that the nav gem is going to say that the hurricane is going to go north and it moves out and it says goodbye. A little small high pressure split into this. And we're going to talk about what that means here in a moment. And then the GFS is, the cyclonic winds. So the measurement of the cyclonic winds is also showing a relatively uniform pattern within the GFS that is going to go north. But the GFS does not see Erin going near as strong as the icon does. So, or even the Euro thinks it's going to be stronger. So when the GFS is the least stormy storm, it's always very interesting when that happens, because usually the GFS is showing pretty much, I guess worst case scenario, we'll say that, and it's learning, and we're going to see a lot of different, learned traits and models. We're really in exciting times because even the GFS, the Euro, everyone has the AI models. So we're having not only, professionals looking at these storms, but we're also having our artificial intelligence take a look into kind of keeping everyone honest. So the Atlantic, we're going to talk about this as well, but this is just the setups for how you can see Hurricane Erin right in there. This is, of course, the GFS, and it moves forward and it moves out. So that is how the models look, and you can see the steering patterns, the trade winds, and then the westerlies, and then the inner coastal convergent zone seems to be providing off the MDR, and it is showing almost a direct line east to west, and even has started to swallow up a lot of the westerlies. You can see some of the westerlies moving up like this. So it is a very, very interesting time, and we are here to help you through it all. So that's the models. Now let's talk about some of the agreement and disagreement between what is coming next over the next few days. We are back with the GFS, and we can see the remnants of Erin leaving the building here. So she is gone and out. So we still have our semi-permanent setup here of the high pressure that is over the Azores, and there is very, very interesting things that the GFS is trying to say is a potential for the upcoming days. Now down here, not to belabor the thought since we are in August 22nd here, but that's not that far off, folks. It's just not that far. So right around here, and we have a lot of disagreement within the models. As of last night, and I was watching this, I even showed it on the video, that there was a potential for another storm that would go into the Caribbean and then go into the Gulf. So when I noticed that none of the other models had really any agreement with it, you kind of just throw that off to the side. But there's another couple of models that are starting to say that there are things now, whether or not they form or whether or not they are going to come to fruition, or if there's any creation event, does it just fold into the trade winds and blow out into the Yucatan? Does it stay north? Does it just dissipate altogether? We'll have to see. But here is what's going on here. All right. So we've circled that area down in here, and it's a 1008 low pressure that's coming right off of the Lesser Antilles. And it even falls apart completely here. But this is that area. So I'm going to I'm going to paint this. So let's say it was here. Now it's here. What is it going to do? Now, the other models have that this is going to go like this. But what the GFS says is, look what just happened. A steering high pressure sets up, and it's not nearly as dominant as this, but does it have enough push and enough steering current, or enough? In this case, it's steering it further south. So its patterns are doing this like that, while this is doing like this. So it really doesn't have the ability, as far as the GFS is concerned. It has to do this because it doesn't have any room. So if this is room and it's a steering, or this is it's steering, the reason for the steering is in this high pressure. It doesn't have any. It really can do this, or it can do this. Which direction does it go? You just don't know which way it's going to go. But since this is set up, it's keeping the MDR cyclonic creation further south. And when it keeps very much further south, then you have the potential for Caribbean rapid intensification and or the Gulf, or even up the East Coast. So that is what the GFS is saying about that. So let's move this forward. Watch that high pressure. It stays there. And then almost like a homegrown, you have a triple high. Look at that. So now the Bermuda high is in, and the Azores. So these are becoming, let's get rid of that guy. Let's just do this. These are becoming the dominant high, a Bermuda high. And this becomes a weaker high for the first time in the season, really. So if this is that case, and remember, if this is out here, then the steering columns look like this. So we'll do pink. The steering columns look like this. All right, that's what it is. So it would take a lot of steam off of it, which would not keep the storms south, and then the storms would go like this. It would go like that. So the Bermuda high sets up, and then the movement goes like this, and it really has nothing else to do but just move like that. That's the way it will start to move, because this high is no longer dominating. These highs are dominating, and that's what the GFS is saying. Very, very interesting stuff. But without further ado, let's see how this sets up. Remember where it's down there. So we have a 1008, 1009, 1006, 1008, 1009, and it does form right off of, now it's over land, Cuba and the Dominican and Haiti, and all basically the greater Antilles just, really tries to chew this thing up. But it does get into the Gulf and start to become, so it does affect, I would say, at least as a pretty strong tropical depression or a category 1 hurricane. But then it gets into the Gulf and it makes a really westerly north, not northwest, more west than north, and it sits out there in the Gulf, and it picks up steam at a 951. So you're talking about a 950, 948. So a 948, which would be right at a strong category 3. With potential category 4, depending on that. So that is what the GFS says. And then look, by the time everything was starting to set up, look what happened. The Bermuda high is there. Now this is starting to try to set up again, but the damage is already done. This track of this storm already did this. So this became less important, and it wasn't steering. This one was doing the steering. So that is how it was working. Of course, the United States also has the ability to throw some things at it, but it looks like it's not going to for the GFS. So that is what that looks like. Now, the Euro, let's see what the Euro said. Let's go the Euro. So the Euro has Erin going out to sea, but look, the setup for even the Euro says that setup is here. And it even says that the high is here. Now the high that moved over to Bermuda, it's saying that it's not strong enough, which That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That doesn't make a lot of sense since it is now the GFS was a little bit further south down here, so that could be the determining factor in why the euro is not as bullish on this storm. So let's go ahead and do that. And it moves forward, moves forward, moves forward, moves forward the 22nd, and it stalls. So it stays right in there, that 1011, 1011. It's still there, just doesn't know what it wants to do. And it says it starts to move north, but we'll have to wait for what the euro says. The euro says that this thing's set up a lot more north. The GFS was down here like this. And then the euro is, I believe, is going to do something like this if it even forms. And then maybe it just kind of does this. That's what I think the euro is going to do. Now, that doesn't mean, and I wasn't going to really talk much more about this, but then the icon came in and we started to look. Now, there's the setup. There's the setup for the icon, right? Or for the Fernand. All right, so Fernand. All right, and we'll do a big old question mark. So watch what this does for the icon. Now remember, the icon has the Erin as an absolute beast. But let's see what happens when we start to move forward. Let's see what happens. So we move this forward, and the icon says it keeps it very much lower south, like the GFS does. It's still almost, the GFS and the euro are both in agreement that that is going to set up, but does it do anything? It starts to get a little bit more of a player out there. It does hit some land. That, look at the high, guys. Look at the high, how far south it is. You were talking about a tremendously dominant. So is that shooting this that way? Is the steering column, getting caught up in this, that it will start to do this? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. We're August 24th, moves forward, moves forward, moves forward. And then the icon that it does form at a 10. So at least a tropical depression does form that the icon does show. So that is what we're looking at. We have a lot to watch. We're going to keep on watching the Erin and seeing if it does do any wobble. We're still, a good couple of days away from where this is. We've already seen the euro wobble a little bit west, so we're going to keep our eyes on everything. It looks like there is tendencies towards a Bermuda high that's coming in the end of August. That's very, very typical as we get into September, which we talk about the peak time frame of a hurricane season. So lots to talk about, lots to watch. I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. I know I have, and we are watching. We're watching it together. So if you haven't done so, please leave a like and a comment. And if you could just subscribe to the channel, that would be fantastic. It would go a long way for me to continue this. And it does take a lot of work and a lot of time, and I'm enjoying it greatly, but your support is always so much appreciated. Now, everybody, I'm going to end most of my videos now with please stay safe. Please watch. Please make sure that you are taking precautions. Don't trust the models. Don't trust talking heads. Do your own due diligence. Listen to your state officials, your city officials. Make right decisions during this time of the hurricane season. Thank you so much, guys. We are the Atlantic Front. I am TheJakeman, and I will be back next time. So we'll see you real soon.